Welcome to another edition of the ISB podcast. I'm your host, Sahil, flying solo today, but we had to cover the third place match from the Copa America. We told you we'd do all the matches, so we had to do it, and especially for our Uruguayan and Canadian viewers out there. This turned out to be a fantastic match. Dare I say the best in Copa America? I would say almost, definitely up there. Maybe Colombia, Uruguay slightly edges it. But this was a fantastic match. And I got to say, Canada, you guys played well. Fantastic. Hats off and so close to getting a epic third place finish, which would have been, just phenomenal. Regardless of that, I think the tournament was a huge success for Canada as a whole. But I want to talk about one player in this particular match. And later, Rahi will come in and he'll chime in. He had some words to say as well. All of us watching felt very strongly about this particular match. And, Uruguay did what Uruguay does. They played well, but I thought on this day, Canada was the better team. Canada was definitely the better team, created more chances, except for that last portion at the end. We'll get to that in a second. But the reason being is the player that I wanted to talk about before, Mr. Ismail Kone. And my goodness, did this guy have a game. So hats off to Kone. I thought what was very interesting is Jesse Marsh should look at this particular lineup for future matches. He had Jonathan Osorio there. He had Kone there, sort of right there behind him. And I thought it served very, very well in terms of overall just how the Canadians played on this day. And my goodness, did Kone score a fantastic goal. I mean, that bike kick off the corner was amazing. But even besides that, he was so involved in the match. And I think that was a key that stood out to me. And also, I got to call out Cornelius with some fantastic last ditch tackles that I thought was going to be good enough for the Canadians to get through. Jonathan David gets the finish that they needed, and everything seemed to be set up after an overall great match by the Canadians to come back into the match after Betancourt scored first. And then the last few minutes, it just fell apart a little bit. I don't know what happened there. I don't know why the Canadians weren't more defensively alert. It seems strange because we saw it at the very end, and I'm talking literally the last 10 minutes of the match after Canada scored a goal. But actually, not even when Canada scored. It was about maybe like 4 or 5 minutes after Canada scored when it looked like, okay, they were going to see this out pretty easily. And of course, there was 5 minutes of injury time as well. And in the added time, I felt Luis Suarez had a gilt edge chance previously to score and he missed it. So after he missed it, I'm saying, okay, that's it. Canada's done enough. But then right after that, to allow Suarez another chance. Now, granted, he was in an offside position, so they weren't expecting it. And then the play developed. And of course, as the play develops, then it becomes onside again. But it's a very unfortunate because on this day, I think Canada deserved to win. I think even Uruguayan fans would probably say, look, as a whole, in totality, this was not a day where they were better than Canada. I think Uruguay started the match off well with Betancourt, but after that, I think there was, some periods of time in the match where Canada's got to be pretty proud of themselves. So, of course, Uruguay and the penalties was fantastic. They all took fantastic penalties. So I got to say, once it got to penalties, Uruguay, that's one thing that's been consistent this tournament, even against Brazil, took great penalties. Today took great penalties. And Alphonso Davies tried to do a Messi penalty, and we've seen that hasn't worked now twice. So I would say the Panenka, be careful if you're attempting a Panenka in penalties because you have to execute it exactly correctly. Otherwise, it looks a little bit foolish. But besides that, I got to say, Uruguay deserved third place finish overall in terms of if you look at the tournament as a whole. I'd say Uruguay has probably been the third best team. But will they be disappointed that they didn't get further? A lot of people have been saying this. I say no. I think they're firmly the third best team in this tournament. I'd say Colombia and Argentina have both been better. Argentina marginally. I'd say Colombia has been quite a bit better, but of course that doesn't translate to the final. But that's the story with Uruguay. We can close the books on that. The real story here is Canada, because if you were to tell me before the tournament that the Canadians would finish fourth and be a few minutes away from being third, I would never have thought that. Now, I've been following this team for a while. We've obviously know them closely in terms of just CONCACAF being a fan of the U.S. men's national team and the rivalry that's sort of developed between the two. But I've always found that this particular team is it's a unique group of players, and you've talked about golden generations of different groups. This is I believe has the potential to be Canada's golden generation, because if you look at the players today that played well, Kone, super young, Schaffelberg, super young, Bombito, quite young. So all of these players together are forming a nice base, along with the best player in the region, of course, Alphonso Davies. And if they can get Jonathan David to start firing more for the national team once Buchanan comes back, there's a lot of danger players on this team. And I think if they can sort out some of the things in the back, which now maybe, I think Cornelius actually played a good game. Bombito had a good game. So you're starting to see the pieces to the puzzle get figured out. And I think Jesse Marsch is going to have a fun time with this particular group in the next 2 years heading into the World Cup. And I got to say, it's an exciting time for Canadian soccer. And it just is a great thing for the region as a whole to have a team like this that, is the team that is going to be moving forward into. Now you say, okay, are they the top of CONCACAF? I would say them and the US, now it's a conversation again, right? Canada's right up there. So I think that this is just better for the region as a whole, but more importantly for Canadian soccer. And I think, going into the last World Cup, right? There was a lot of potential that Canada, I think, had, and people were excited about the team because they finished first in qualifiers and all that. But then, during the World Cup, it never really materialized. They showed some signs in the Belgium match, right? We saw some signs in the Belgium match. We saw some signs in the very early part of the match against Croatia. But then after that, it kind of, fell off. And I think this team, after this tournament, they've got the juice back. This is a difficult team to play against. And I think they can take this platform and leverage it based on how they perform in the Copa America. And I would say, for all intents and purposes, a few minutes away from finishing third, that is a huge achievement. So let's go over to Rahi and see what he had to say about this match. For those of you enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be back to do a full breakdown later of Copa America and all that. I'll have the boys and we'll discuss it and get all that out of there. But for now, I want to give it over to Rahi. He had a lot to say about this match. See you guys.
I was impressed and thoroughly surprised by Canada's performance today. They were the better team, deserved to win the game. And Ismail Kone, man, the kid is a star, center of everything good that Canada did. Assisted the second goal, scored the first goal, and unfortunately, he's the guy that misses the penalty. It's heartbreaking. Didn't deserve to be on the losing side today. He was the man of the match. A great performance for Canada. Should have been third place. A great tournament for Canada. Really, there's going to be better days ahead because you have to be super excited about the future of this team, about what they have cooking, about what they're building there in Canada. Congrats to the Canadian team because they made today their own. Should have been third place.